this video, we're going to look at fraction relationships. We're going to focus on finding decimals and percents. So the first thing we're going to look at is converting fractions to decimals. So a fraction can be converted to a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. So again, the numerator is my top number. The denominator is my bottom number. So when I set this up, I am going to take my 2 and divide it by my 5, or 2 divided by 5, or I could write it as 2 divided by 5. And when I do that, my answer is 4/10. So here I have 3 divided by 4, or 3 divided by 4. Or again, I could set it up as 3 divided by 4. And when I do all of that, I get my answer of 75 hundredths. Here I have 5/8, so that is 5 divided by 8, or 5 divided by 8. Or I could set it up as 5 divided by 8. And when I do all of that, I get 625 thousandths. Here I have 2/3. So again, I have 2 divided by 3, or 2 divided by 3. Or I could do 2 divided by 3. And when I get that, I would get a number of 0 decimal, and the 6's continue to repeat. So how I can write that is 0 with my decimal, and then the 6, and then a line over it. This line means that the 6's are going to continue to repeat forever. My next one here is 2 and 4/5. So again, I have a whole number of 2 out here. So first I'm going to look at my 4/5. So I have 4 divided by 5, or I could write it as 4 divided by 5, or 4 divided by 5. And that gets me an answer of 8/10. But again, I have this whole number 2 out in front, so that's going to take the place of this 0. So just like I have 2 and 4/5, I have 2 and 8/10. Here we're going to look at converting fractions to percents. So if the denominator is a factor or multiple of 100, you can multiply or divide to make an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. So here I have 6/20, and I know that 20 is a factor of 100 because I can take 20 and multiply it by 5 to get a denominator of 100. So if I multiply that by 5, then I need to multiply this by 5, and 6 times 5 is 30. And I know that 30 per 100 is the same as 30%. So 6/20 as a percent would be 30%. If the denominator is not a factor or multiple of 100, you cannot make an equivalent fraction with the denominator of 100. So in that case, I need to go through 2 steps. So step 1 is to convert the fraction to a decimal. And again, in doing that, I'm going to take my 5/6 and take 5 divided by 6, or 5 divided by 6, or 5 divided by 6. And when I end up doing that, I come up with a decimal of 0.83, and my threes continue to repeat. So I'm going to draw my line up here again to show just my three repeats. So I only want to draw my line above my three. And then step two is to convert the decimal to a percent. So if my decimal is 0.83 with a line over the three, and then to convert the decimal to a percent, remember that I'd move my decimal over once, twice, and that gives me 83 decimal. And since my threes were repeating, I'm going to put another three here with a line over it, and then that would be my percent. So it'd be 83 decimal 3 repeating percent. So now let's take a look at these fractions, and we're going to change them to percents. And it says here we're going to round to the nearest tenth if we need to. So again, 3/4. Well, I know that, 4 multiplied by 25 is going to give me 100. So then I multiply the 3 times 25, so that gives me 75. And when I have a denominator of 100, that's 75 per 100. So that makes it 75%. 5/8, again, would be 5 divided by 8, because 8 does not go evenly into 100. So if I take 5 divided by 8, or 5 divided by 8, that gives me a decimal of 0.625. And again, when I have a decimal to change to a percent, I need to go once, twice. So that gives me 62 and 5/10 percent. So now I have 2/3. And again, 3 does not go into 100 evenly. So I'm going to take 2 divided by 3, or 2 divided by 3, or 2 divided by 3. And that gives me 0.6. And that 6 continues to repeat forever. So again, to change a decimal to a percent, I'm going to move this once, twice. Well, since my 6 repeats, that means there's actually another 6 here. And so I would have 66 decimal. And again, since the sixes are repeating, that gives me another 6 here. And then I would put my line over it to show that it is continually repeating. And then I have percent. So it would be 66.6 repeating percent. So now I have three more fractions. I look at 27/8. And so one thing I notice here with this one is that my numerator is larger than my denominator. So that means I have an improper fraction. So when I get to my percent, I know that my percent is going to be higher than 100%. So again, I take 27 divided by 8, or 27 divided by 8, or 27 divided by 8. And when I get my decimal here, I have 3 decimal 375. And then when I move my decimal to make my percent, I'm going to move it once, twice. So that gives me 337 and 5/10 percent. And again, this is more than 100% because my fraction is an improper fraction. So here I have 35/50. I know that if I take this times 2, I get to 100. And I know that if I then take this times 2, that gives me 70. And again, it's 70 per 100. And so that means I have 70%. Last one here. Again, I have 2 as a whole number, so that means my percent is going to be larger than 100%. So again, let's focus on the fraction here. So I have 4 fifths, or 4 divided by 5, 4 divided by 5, or 4 divided by 5. And when I do that, work that out, that gives me 0.80. And so again, I have my 2 here. So that 2 is going to take the place of this 0. So it'd be 2.80. Move my decimal once, twice, and that gives me 280%. And again, I know that this is larger than 100% because I have my 2 up here.